Hello, my name is Kevin Snyder, here for Tuts Plus. Let's jump right in and take a look at what we'll be making today. Okay, so a little short preview. Let's watch it one more time. So in After Effects, we're going to create this look where we have the paper rolling up. Now the paper rolling up is in 3D space and it's all in After Effects. So we're going to use a lot of different expressions and scripts to make this happen, but I think the workflow is pretty straightforward. It's not too bad. So let's jump right in and get started. Okay, we're going to start off here in Photoshop. My document is 1600 pixels wide, 900 pixels tall, and we're going to make sure we have a transparent background. Now we're going to start off with some torn paper textures. There's a link below the tutorial to see where you can get these, or you can create your own. In the download, there's a lot of different torn textures in there. I just picked out two that I thought would work out well for this tutorial. So let's go ahead and bring those into Photoshop. And we're going to create a path in the middle of our document where there's no texture, because this is going to be a matte in After Effects for us. Okay, enter, and scale this one up. Okay, so this center area here where we don't have any paper is what's going to be torn out in After Effects. So let's go ahead and get rid of the white. So we just use the magic wand, select the white, create a mask for that, and we actually need to hold down Alt and click on the mask and go to Adjustments and Invert. Okay, so we have that. And on this layer below, I'll select the white, go to Select Inverse, and then we'll click on the Mask tool. Okay, we're ready to save this and take it over to After Effects where we'll finalize our paper texture. So let's just go ahead and save this. I already have it saved. I'll just save over the top of that one. Now let's jump over to After Effects. Okay, let's go ahead and make a new comp, Control N. And I'm going to call this comp outside paper. And we are going to make this 1600 by 900. And I'm just going to make this 30 frames per second. A length of 20 seconds will be good. Let's go ahead and say OK. Let's go ahead and bring in our Photoshop file. Okay, I'm going to bring it in as footage. Merge layers is fine. And we also need now, so we're only going to utilize the matte of this Photoshop file. We're not going to actually utilize this paper texture. For the paper texture, I'm going to use this paper 0004 layer 41. This is actually from a Video Copilot download that he had of paper, and there'll be a link for this resource as well. So let's go ahead and bring that into After Effects. And I'm going to just go ahead and tidy up a little bit here as we go. Okay, so with my paper texture that we get from Video Copilot, this is the one that's going to actually be the texture of the paper folding. So I'm going to put this below my torn paper mat. And if I pull out, we can see that it's rather large. So let's scale it down. Okay, it doesn't need to be exact. That'll work. And I'm going to click F4 on my keyboard so that we can see the options for the track mat. And we're going to make this on alpha. Okay, and so now you can see we have a nice outside part of our torn paper. Now we just need the inside part of the torn paper. So I'm going to go over here to comps, my outside paper, I'm going to do Control D to duplicate it. I'm going to enter to rename it. This is going to be inside paper. So this is the inside paper strip. I'm going to double click to open that. And all we're going to do is set this to alpha inverted. So now we have the center of the paper that's actually going to be peeled out. Let's go ahead and create a new comp, Control N. And this comp here, this is going to be, I'm just going to name this main. And I want this comp to be 1280 by 720. So this is going to be my final output size here. Okay. We'll say OK. And now I'm going to bring my inside paper and outside paper both together, bring them in. And together, they make one piece of paper. Now, as you can see right here, we have a little bit of a line on the border between the two. Okay, and to fix that, and for a little workaround here, we're going to go to inside paper. And on the Photoshop mat that we have here, I'm going to hit S for scale. I'm going to unlink the X and Y values. And I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger along the Y value. So maybe just 106. Let's go 105. Let's try that. And so now if I go back to main, that seam is gone. Okay, it looks pretty good. Now right now, if I zoom out, you can see that our two textures together, they are bigger than our comp. And that's okay because we're going to eventually make all these layers 3D. And that's just going to give us a little bit more room to move our camera around within the scene. The next thing we're going to need to do in order to actually get paper to curl in After Effects is we're going to slice this inside piece of paper up into a bunch of really thin slices so that we can manipulate them and give it the appearance that we're actually curling the paper. So for right now, I'm going to turn off the outside paper because we're only interested on this inside paper. And we're going to use a script, and this script is called RD Slicer. So this is a great little script, and we can put in how many rows we want, how many columns we want. So obviously you can make a grid of images, but we just want slices. So we're going to do one column. Roundness, we want it to be 0. We don't want to have any roundness at all. And I don't want to use any blending modes right now, and I do not want to parent all my slices parented to a null. Now for rows, the more rows we have, or I'm sorry, this is backwards. We want one row, and we're going to add a bunch of columns, right? Columns go vertical. So we're going to add a lot of columns in here. Now the more columns you add, the smoother the roll is going to look when it rolls up. Now for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to keep the numbers a little bit lower. I used a little bit higher value in my preview, but things kind of do slow down because we're going to have a lot of 3D layers in here. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and choose 125 columns, okay, and click on Slice. Okay, as you can see now, we have 125 layers of our inside paper. So each one is very, very thin. Okay, just what we wanted. So that script works pretty fast. Okay, so what RD Slice did when it slices was just make a bunch of masks on copies of the layer. So if I hit M, we can see we have a mask, and so each layer has its own mask. Now if I zoom in here, we can see that we have one little problem, and we have really thin lines in here that we can see. Okay, so to combat that, we're going to go ahead and expand the mask just a little bit on each one to help fill in those gaps. And we may want to fill or adjust the mask expansion more as it curls up so we can kind of adjust it to get the look that we want. Now we have 125 layers, and we want to come up with a fast way to be able to adjust all the mask expansions at one time. So we're going to do that using expressions. So let's go to Layer and New, a new null object. And let's name, got to be selected here. I'm going to hit Enter. I'm going to name the null controller. And in the effects control panel for the controller, I'm going to right click and do expression controls. And let me come over here so you can see a little bit better. Expression controls, slider control. And let's go ahead and name this mask expansion. Okay, so we're going to link all the mask expansions to this one controller so that we can adjust them all at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this. And with my first layer selected, I'm going to click M twice. And we have mask expansion. I'm going to hold down Alt and click the stopwatch. And we're going to go ahead and pick whip to the slider and hit Enter. And so now when I adjust this control here, it automatically updates down here. Let me set that back down to 0. Now we want to copy this expression from this one layer to all 124 remaining layers. Now if I click on mask expansion and right click and do copy expression only, I discovered one small problem in After Effects, and I don't know if it's a bug or not. Most properties, if I just select the next layer and do Control V, it'll paste just the expression. But take a look what happens. I'll do Control V and hit M on here on this layer, and it actually just copied this layer and pasted it down here. It didn't actually paste the expression. Well, it did paste the expression, but it's on the secondary mask. We don't want that to happen. We want just the expression to be there. So I'm going to delete this second mask, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose copy expression only. And the thing I've discovered that I need to do is select all my layers. I'm going to click M twice so that mask expansion is being shown. And now we are going to click and drag and highlight all these layers. Now I'm only going to do about half at a time. I've noticed that my RAM usage really goes high when I'm trying to select all of them. So just to keep things from going unresponsive, I'll select down to layer 53, Control V. And so now you can see these numbers turn red, so I know that they're linked up here. So for some reason with mask properties, I have to go through here and highlight them. So now let's go ahead and do another chunk. And I can tell that things start slowing down because when the scrolling gets really slow. So I'll stop right there. Control V again. Let's do the next chunk. Okay, right there, Control V. And so now they should all be linked to this layer here. So if we come in here, we're at 100%. And let's deselect our layers. Let's go to the controller. Now if I just increase this maybe by 1, okay, we get rid of the lines. And like I said, we can adjust this more or less later on. But now we at least have a quick, easy tool to be able to fill in those gaps. Since this is a 3D project, it is now time to make it official, and we need to make these layers 3D. Okay, so I'm going to select all my inside paper textures, and I'm going to hit F4, and we're going to go ahead and turn on the switch to make them 3D. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is, if I zoom in here, the anchor point for each of these slices is right in the center. Now, we want them to be linked together. We're going to end up linking all these layers together, but we want them to be anchored on the side so that we can make a big long chain of these layers. If we keep them anchored in the center, when we go to curl these, they're going to rotate around the center of our slice, and we don't want that to happen. We want it to be on the edge over here. So we could do them independently of one another. We can do them one by one, but that's not fun. So we're going to run a script, and this one is move anchor point. So this is a great script. It's really fast, and all we do is select which corner of our layer we want it. So we can easily put it in the center where it already is. And it's really a nice visual tool here. And you can also put in your own custom point for your mask. And the nice thing about using this script is the layer is going to stay in its original place. We're only moving the anchor point. And this works really well with mask. As you can see, we can check to have it ignore the mask, but we want it to be right on the edge where the mask is, so we'll leave that unchecked. We're going to move all the anchor points to the left-hand side of the slice. Okay, and there we go. Not too bad for processing 125 layers. Okay, the next step is to go ahead and actually link these layers together. And what we want to happen is if I start to rotate this first layer, I want all the other layers to rotate with it. And so we're going to do that through parenting, right? So here's our first layer on the left, and we want to parent all 125 layers together. And we could do that by taking this bottom layer and parent it to the one above it, and we could do that down the whole line. Now, obviously, I don't want to do that. It would just take too long, so we're going to utilize a script for that. So let me come through here and select all my layers again. Okay, and I'm going to go to File, Scripts, and this one is called Layer Chain. Now it says, would you like to parent to the layer above? Hitting No will parent to the layer below. So we do, because this layer we want attached to the one above, this layer here we want attached to the one above, and so on. So let's click Yes. And so now we can see here in the parent column, span this out, that layer number 2 here is parented to this first layer, and layer number 3 is parented, so that the third slice is parented to slice number 2, and so on, all the way down the line. So this works out really well. Now if I come in here to my inside paper, and I come in here to rotate, and if I want to rotate along the Y axis, so all my layers now are moving with it. Okay, that's what we want. Now obviously, if we just rotate all the layers the same amount, we just get one plane moving through space, and that's not really the look that we're going for. So we need to change our parenting just a little bit in order to get it to actually curl up. So let me set that back down to 0. In order to get the curl look that we want, is what I experiment with was what happened if I had these slices that were at the very end. What if they curled more than the ones that were close? So as we get closer and closer to our starting slice, the amount of rotation was less. And so it actually works out fairly well. We're going to use an expression to make this happen. Let's take a look at the expression. So on the second slice down, I'm going to click on R for rotation. So if I hold down Alt and press on the stopwatch next to Y rotation, I'm going to paste in my expression. And basically is what this is doing is it's saying look at the layer above it, and whatever the Y rotation is, copy it. So let me hit enter. And so now if I change the Y rotation here to, let's say, 2.3, the Y rotation here is 2.3. Okay, so this doesn't really work for us because it's just mirroring what our initial value is. So we need to add one more thing to this. We want to add a little bit onto each one. So let me see if I can explain this properly. If we take this rotation, let's say that it's 1, and this value here we want to be just a little bit more than this one, we can add a value to this. And then as we go down the line, this next layer here will take this value. Well, let's just back up. Let's go ahead and finish our expression here. So on this control layer, I'm going to add another slider control. Oop, Control Z, I had my inside paper selected. We want it on the control. So I'm going to go and add another slider control. And I'm going to call this rotation offset. Okay, so what we're going to do on this expression is we're going to add just a little bit. We want to add whatever value we put in here. Okay, so now it's going to copy the rotation from the layer above it, and then it's going to add whatever our value is here. So if I put in 0.2, now we have 1.2 because it's taking the initial value and adding 0.2 to it. Okay, so now if I take this expression, or let me just right click on Y rotation, copy expression only, and go to rotation, and let's do Control V. So we have 1.2 here, we have 1.4 on this layer because it's taking this value, 1.2, and adding our 0.2 to it. So as we go down the line, by the time we get to the very end, it's going to have a lot more rotation than these beginning layers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set this to 0. And I already have my expression copied. Now the nice thing is for some reason with rotation expressions, we don't need to show them. We can leave all of our folders, or I'm sorry, all of our layers collapsed. Select them all. I'm going to do Control V to paste. And now if I click on R, so we can see that we're already getting some results here. We have our expression put in there. Okay. And let's go ahead and add a slider for our initial value too, so that we don't have to keep coming down into this layer. So with controller selected, I'm going to right click and do expression controls again, slider control, and let's just call this main rotation. And let's go ahead and click on Alt and the stopwatch, and we'll parent that to our main rotation slider. So now if I select everything, let's go ahead and twirl it up. Go ahead and save this as we're going. So now if we play with this a little bit, we can start with this value being very small, let's say 0.01. So we get just a little bit of rotation, but now I'm going to hold down Control and scrub this rotation offset so that it doesn't move too much. A little bit goes a long ways here. So as you can see, if I scrub it too much, let's go back. So it's very sensitive here. Okay, so we're getting our paper rolling up here. And we can kind of make this easier. If we twirl down to show the actual slider, if we right click on slider, we can edit value. And maybe we want this to go from 0 to 0.2. Looks pretty good actually. Let's just say 0.25. So now when we get in here, the slider is not quite so sensitive, and it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, and it looks like actually, let's go ahead and add a new layer. We're going to add a camera, and let's just make this 50 millimeters. Okay, I want to go to a custom view, Okay, that's actually looking pretty good. We may want to change our initial value here. Let's go 0.05. Yeah, let's try scrubbing this. Okay, so it's curling up pretty nice. Okay, and so obviously if we go negative values, it will curl the opposite direction. Okay, now that we have our paper rip rigged, let's go ahead and finish up this scene. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and this inside paper here, this was our original comp, and I'm going to go ahead and delete that. We don't need that anymore. I'm going to turn on the outside paper, and we need to make that a 3D layer. Now, one thing about this paper that I'm not liking is it's awfully light. Okay, so I'm going to go to outside paper, and on this paper texture, I'm going to add a curves to it, and I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and on the inside paper, on the paper texture, we're going to go ahead and paste that one as well so that they match. And this is looking a lot better. Let's go ahead and animate the tear. So on the controller, we're going to animate the rotation offset. We don't need to touch the main rotation because just by applying a little bit of change to the rotation offset, we're going to be adding rotation to all of our layers progressively, right? So a little bit will be added to each layer as we go down the stack here. So at time 0, I'm going to set a keyframe for 0, and then about 2 seconds in, things tend to get a little bit slow here, so we got to be a little bit patient. So at about 2 seconds, let's go ahead and animate this to where we want the paper to stop. So that looks pretty good right there. Let's go ahead and move our camera so that we can get a better feeling for how much it's rolled up. So I'm going to press C on the keyboard, rotate through our camera tools, and I'm going to rotate it so we can see this tear a little bit better from the side. Okay, and I want to just zoom in a little bit and maybe move this over so we can see that curl that we worked hard on creating. Okay, I'm liking that. Now, one thing on the controller here, if I hit U on the keyboard, we see our keyframes. When this paper gets to its resting spot, I want it to bounce a little bit, like the paper has some stiffness to it. So there's a great preset for that. We can get it from Gray Machine, and this is called inertial bounce. Okay, so we can apply that to our slider, and actually I don't need to grab it like that. Just highlight whatever property you want to apply it to, and we'll double click. It turns red. We know there's an expression there. E on the keyboard twice, and here you can tweak the settings here. You can change the amplitude, frequency, and decay. For this, I'm just going to leave those at their default. Let's go ahead and, since this is a 3D project, we'll add some lights to this. So we'll go Layer, New, Light, and we're going to add a point light. We can maybe change the color so it's just not pure white, maybe just a little bit warmer. It'll help that paper texture too. And we want it to cast shadows. Shadow darkness I'll leave at 50% and shadow diffusion at 34%. So already this is looking a lot better, and one drawback of the lights, it looks good, but it sure slows things down quite a bit. Okay, so I'm going to work on getting some lighting done here. I won't bore you too much with getting a bunch of this too perfect. Let's make another light, Control D to duplicate it. And let's maybe bring it out here to the front and on the opposite side of our other light. That looks good. And I think I'm going to bring down T for intensity on the light. I'm going to bring down the intensity on this light here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and maybe add Control D, maybe one more light. I want to get a light that's up here above it. And I'm going to bring the intensity way down. Okay, just to fill it in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lock all these layers for right now, and I'm going to lock our outside paper as well, because we're going to make some adjustments to these inside ones. So I'll do Control A to select them all. I'm going to press AA on the keyboard to show our materials. On our materials, we want this paper roll to cast shadows, so I'm going to put that on. Now, so I like this because we can see the shadow back here being casted. One problem that comes up though, and it took me a little bit to figure this out, and let me roll over to full resolution here, and let's bring this into 100%. And we have to be just a little bit patient. So it's not the fastest project. Right in here we start seeing a lot of lines on our paper slices, and that's because we're getting shadows being casted from one to another. So in order to combat that, we have to not let, so we want the shadows to be casted onto the outside paper here, but we don't want them being casted onto one another. So that does impact the look a little bit, but you know, I think it looks a lot better to eliminate those shadows. So I'm going to come down into our timeline, Control A to select all of our layers. Let me try and get in here so we can see. Right here on Accept Shadows, we are going to turn that off. So if we cycle through, we can have it on off there. Okay, and that's going to help us. Let's go ahead and deselect our layers in here. So that makes it look a lot better. Okay, and remember too, I'm using not as many layers as you could. My preview one, I have more layers, and so the lines are not nearly as prominent. Okay, so more layers, the better this is going to look. The other thing that we can do too for the roll up, I'm going to select all, is we can turn on motion blur for these, and that really helps quite a bit as well. So if we turn on motion blur, and we have to be just a little bit patient here. Okay, it helps it out. Now the other thing we can do too is actually position our lights to help this look as well. Okay, so I think is one thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and turn off this top light. Another thing we can do is add a layer beneath here. So let's go over to our project panel, and I have some textures of cardboard pieces. So this piece right here I thought might look good underneath that rip to reveal that. So let's go ahead and bring this into After Effects. And is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to duplicate our outside paper, Control D. And let's actually let's take this down quite a bit. Turn off our motion blur. What else can we do? Let's go maybe fast draft. Okay, trying to make this as fast as we can. So with my duplicated outside paper on the bottom here, I'm going to take my cardboard piece, take it, Alt, drag onto the other one. And let's go ahead and hit S for scale. We'll scale this down quite a bit. Okay, so we have a little bit of a problem here because they're on the same plane. So we hit P for position, and on the Y value here, we can get that just. So the problem with fast draft is it's hard to see what's going on. There we go. So we can move this. Things are really getting slow. We can move this up and down, right? So we want it just below this other surface. There we go. Now let me come to the outside paper, AA, just to check the material options to see what we have going on. Cast shadows, let's go ahead and turn that on so that there's a little bit of a shadow between the two layers. And everything else looks good. So I want to see a little bit more separation here between these two. So, all right, we're gonna go ahead and leave that there. Obviously you can play with that as much as you want. Let's go ahead and add some text to this. And we can make this 3D. I'm gonna go ahead and come down here to my cardboard position. I'm going to copy the position from that layer. Let's go to the position for our text, paste that in there, and I'm going to bring the scale down. Slide this into place here. AA, check it out. Cast shadows, I want to turn that on. Everything else is looking good. Let's see, I just want to make sure that on the position here, I just want it right above this back layer. And then we just want to double check when the paper is rolled over the top that we can't see it coming through either. So let's go to full. Okay, and I think I'm going to do, I would say a quick RAM preview, but this is not necessarily really quick. Okay, and we can see a little bit of a pattern here where the two overlap one another. So one thing that we want to do is on this background, so on this outside paper, on position, we want to go ahead and maybe bring this up 0.1. Let's see what happens here. There we go. So we got rid of that texture. Any place where you have two planes occupying the same place, sometimes you see that a little bit of pattern from those textures overlaying. So just by changing it a little bit, we can get rid of that. So let me go back to our comp. Okay, and there we have it. So this project will obviously test your machine and your patience a little bit when we're getting hundreds of layers all in 3D space, even though they're small slices, it does make things a bit sluggish. So try and do as much as you can before you start turning on all those settings that make it look really good. And remember, the more slices you have, the smoother that curl is going to look. But again, it does test your machine pretty well. So once you get the workflow down though, and you know what you need to do, you can get in there and make those changes, and you don't need to move around a whole lot. But try and figure out how you want your lighting and how the shadows are going to look, because tweaking those things can be a little bit slow. But hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'd love to see what you create making this. Obviously you can use different textures, and it doesn't have to curl just in this one particular way. I think there's a lot of different applications for this process. So if you come up with a new project with this, I'd love to see it. And if anybody comes up with a better expression to make that curl look even better, I'd love to see it. Always looking to improve on these techniques. So hopefully you gained something from this. Thank you for watching.